Welcome to Cafecito y Calidad. I'm your host, Elizabeth Sanchez, licensed marriage and family therapist and certified coffee enthusiast. Whether we're catching up with friends, studying for a big exam, or grounding with a little caffeinated cozy goodness, coffee brings us together, it powers us up, and it gives us a reason to sit down and connect. Each week, I'll be sitting down with an inspiring entrepreneur to discuss their journey towards building successful businesses and the mental wellness tools they use to alleviate burnout. But first, let's take a sip of something warm and comforting, shall we? You all probably know by now, I'm a first-generation Latina entrepreneur who is a big supporter of women-owned businesses. This is why finding El Cielito was such a special discovery for me. This online coffee company is led by the inspiring, warm-hearted, and hilarious social media star Daniel Oliveras, and they specialize in crafting delicious roasts using coffee beans from women-owned farms in Latin America. So why not try something new and support a great cause? Order from El Cielito online coffee company today. Hello and welcome to Cafecito en Calidad, where we have quality conversations over coffee. On this season of Cafecito en Calidad, we're talking all things entrepreneurship and mental health. On today's episode, we're having a Cafecito en Calidad reunion. We have two former guests joining us back for some cafecito. In this episode, we are thrilled to have Juan Carlos, also known as the Modern Macho, and Brittany Williams from Hillmatic, joining us for a candid conversation about social media and allowing ourselves to be seen. Together, we will share our insights around our personal experiences around being seen on social media. So let's give a warm welcome to Juan Carlos and Brittany Williams. Hey, welcome back.
We're live in full effect.
We're live and in full effect with our coffee.
Yeah, now that we got the formal stuff out of the way, now we can just talk.
Now we can just chat. That intro
Drop the
always
shoulders, breathe.
and and we're here. So I asked both of you, but we have to share. How do you both take your coffee?
I take my coffee black. Nothing in it.
The last time that we talked, I shared that I was a baby when it came to the coffee, and I hope that
Foo-foo coffee.
I can get a little bit of flowers here. That I've been drinking my coffee black now.
Hey.
Yeah.
So for those guests who haven't joined Cafecito en Calidad, you'll probably end up leaving drinking black coffee.
Yeah,
Testimonial from one of our guests.
I'm early in the process. It took a lot of sugar packets to get there, but we're here now. We're here now.
Hey, here we are. So on today's episode, we're really excited to share this space with you both because we're going to be talking all things social media and working on our personal journeys of being seen. So, but let's give you guys a little intro for those of you who are guests who haven't seen us or in a while or haven't met Brittany and Juan Carlos. Brittany, can you share a little bit about who you are, and then Juan Carlos, you can jump on in right after.
Cool. Yeah, my name is Brittany. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and founder of Hillmatic Group Practice, where we're a team of therapists that focus on somatic-based work and culturally affirming practices. I'm a therapist, a speaker, a creative. Most people find me on TikTok, and I'm also a mom of 3. So that's me.
You're up.
Yeah. So my name's Juan Carlos. I'm a 30-year-old father to an 8-year-old boy who's my world. I wear multiple hats as well. I'm a full-time electrical estimator. I facilitate father programs. I also am the co-founder of the Modern Macho, is really just a community of men that are trying to become better, that are trying to break the stigmas behind mental health. And I think, really just building community with it. We got a podcast as well. So a little bit of everything.
Yeah, so to be here in this space with two big people that have personally inspired me, such an honor. And I'm really excited to have this candid conversation around social media and, really putting ourselves out there, being seen and using our voice. So what are your thoughts about this conversation today?
Well, I mean, first I want to say thank you. Thank you for having me, for really putting all this together to the team. You guys are incredible. As always. I always
Yes,
love
for
being
sure.
here with you guys. And I think I shared a little bit about this before we started, but I want to just take a second to tell you guys how much, as a client, as a patient, that took forever to finally try therapy. But I really want to give you guys flowers for what you do. I know we're talking about entrepreneurial conversations, but I think it's easy to forget that you guys aren't running a clothing brand. You guys aren't putting together nightclub events. Like, you guys are doing entrepreneurial things to hold space for people consistently, and that to me is incredible. Like, that's amazing. Thank you for what you guys are doing. And hearing your guys' whys earlier and knowing why you guys are doing what you're doing, to me is like, we're so lucky to have you guys. So I just wanted to take a second to kind of acknowledge that from the beginning.
Thank you. That means a lot. Seriously. I think that it's it's easy. I don't think a lot of people understand the work that we do until they go through it themselves. And so there's a lot of emotional labor, but I also feel like the work that I do is very spiritual work too. And so thank you for recognizing us in that way.
Yeah, thank you for seeing us. Thank you for even just recognize, like, I think that for me, that's big, recognizing that this is hard work. We don't stop. I know Brittany and I have had this conversation. We don't stop. We work and we have families, we have a team that we have to take care of. So, and I don't know, I don't hear that often. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And you guys deserve to share that. I think that's
Yeah.
going into the conversation about social media. Like, I think we all have our boundaries, but that vulnerability that's required to be like, hey, I'm human too,
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that that's kind of a big part of the approach that at least I try to take with social media, is sharing a bit of the journey, because I make this very clear. Like, I'm not a professional.
Mm.
We're here as men, and anybody that identifies with our platform that needs the help is like, hey, we just guide you. And like, now feeling grateful that even the imposter syndrome driving over here, I'm like, why am I here? Like, how did I even get the call? Like, I'm gonna go hang out with these two amazing individuals. Like, why do I have a seat at that table, right? But acknowledging that, it's like, how cool that I now have individuals in my life that I could say, oh, I can't help you, but I know that there are people with good intentions that can, or can at least point you into the right direction, right? Because maybe they might not vibe with either of you guys and might decide, hey, that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can help
Yeah.
you with that,
For sure.
Yeah, I think that even just hearing your comment around, seeing Brittany and myself, right? That I think that's been something that I've gotten away from social media, is that I do feel seen from the community of people of color that take the time to even join me for an Instagram live. I know both of you have, but just hearing and seeing the work that I'm putting out there, I think that's helped me in my own healing process, has helped my inner child. And having somebody say, like, yeah, like, you really are doing a lot of work for a community, you're really invested in the work you're doing. That's been one of my biggest takeaways from the social media journey, is just being seen by you guys. Like, it's been so healing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. And another thing that has been really helpful as well is just, Brittany, I know you were mentioning this, but there's this community of BIPOC clinicians or healers that are really putting themselves out there right now.
Yeah, I think for me it started around the pandemic. And in San Diego, everyone was like, you can't tell people where you're from. As a therapist, you have to be this, and you have to, it's all about the client. And that just always, like, I remember I sat in on a session where my supervisor was like leading and I was shadowing, and the client asked them like, "Oh, where are you from?" And the supervisor just kind of redirected the conversation, and I just felt like that didn't really ever sit right with me, right? And so I think that there's always this balance of um I always say putting the human back into the creator or the therapist, right? Especially in the mental health field, or coaching and whatnot. Like, I'm not an expert. I'm always a learner. I don't care how many certifications I have. I don't care. Like, my clients are my best students. And so I think that seeing other therapists in the pandemic really gave me permission to be normal. Like, I don't have to be
Yeah.
this therapist that fits into this box, and, like, only talks about the clinical work. And I think that that is putting the human back into the work, is a part of, destigmatizing and decolonizing, normalizing that, we are many different things.
Yeah. How about yourself, Juan Carlos? I know that we're talking a lot about, like, the mental health
Yeah,
world.
it's funny because I feel like I'm on the other side of the spectrum
Yeah.
too, like as a client, where
Yeah.
I honestly feel that that's such an important part of me taking the jump to go to therapy, right? Because it's intimidating, and especially amongst men, to go to begin with is you're weak,
Yeah.
The fact that you even consider it. Or if you're not weak, then you're at the verge of being crazy. And that's when you go, right? To these two very extremes of why you do or don't go. And to me, it's just very interesting because the way that we've been conditioned, we were talking about this earlier. Like,
Yeah.
I remember in elementary school running into a teacher at the store
Oh,
and just thinking like,
wow.
what the like,
She's human.
like, wait, there's not like teacher stores? Like you don't just like clock out of work and isn't there like a
Yeah.
teacher world that you don't live with us? What? And it's just very interesting now to me because it was normalized. But now growing up and thinking like, man, that's so dehumanizing because I look at a therapist and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, you're a therapist, right? And you look at teachers, look at coaches, and it's like, yeah, they're skilled in what they do, but they live a life just like I do. And to me, there's been a lot of comfort in that, right? To understand that's like, okay, cool. I'm not going to be shamed for thinking or feeling the way that I do or for struggling. It's interesting. My approach at therapy in the beginning was like, well, let me get my shit together and then I'll go to therapy. You know what I mean? Like, let me go in there ready, you know, and you know, going back to social media, I still have moments where I'm like, let me make the perfect reel and then I'll post it. And then I'm like, it's been 2 months, bro, and you haven't posted anything.
You got like 50
You know what I mean?
like
Maybe exactly.
Or the
you don't even wanna look
retakes.
at-
The retakes,
Oh,
like
man.
that perfectionism really comes in.
And you know, I had to push myself to the other end of it where I was just like, stop thinking, just do it.
Yeah.
Let's start there.
Click that button and just post it.
Just hit it, bro.
Well, let me ask you guys this: why do you think there's that hesitation for you? I mean, I feel it. I'm gonna say I have a lot of
love that
things in my
question.
drafts.
I definitely think for me is the inner voice that's already telling me what I think I'm gonna hear, which doesn't exist though.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's also helped me understand of like, okay, process, embrace it, and then acknowledge that. Like, always asking myself, who said that?
Yeah.
Who said that? I'm
Yeah.
like,
Whose voice is that?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's like,
for
oh,
sure.
I guess nobody did.
Mm-hmm.
But what about you guys?
Go ahead, Brittany.
I was actually thinking about that. Like, okay, one of the core beliefs or things that I kind of battle is like, I'm whack, right? And then I really thought about like, who told me that? Like, and I don't know,
Right.
right? Because everyone has given me the exact opposite. But I think it goes back to, you know, being a creative in many different ways is so vulnerable, and I think that we are trying to protect ourselves from the criticism or from the responses or from like not offending people. The reality of it is you can make content and it's like intentional, well thought out, you're accountable, and people are still gonna take it
Yes,
yeah,
and
for
make
sure.
it into something
Whatever
that
it
it's
is.
not. And so I think for me it's that, like, there's a lot of there's the perfectionism, like I need to find the right song, right? The right song to make this hit, because that could really make
Yeah, for
something
sure.
pop. But then the other side of it is the anticipation of, because the scary thing about being on social media is that you can say one thing and it could destroy you.
Oh, for sure.
The
And
cancel culture, right?
yeah, cancel culture. I will say this, though, there are some people that, I mean, homie,
Yeah.
what do you expect? You're
Out
gonna
of
get
pocket.
canceled.
Out
Like,
of
you're gonna get
pocket.
canceled.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so there's I think that there's that for me, is this just like I need to get it right so that I don't offend anybody, or so that's what kind of holds me back sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, I've had to do, I know we mentioned this, Brittany, in a previous episode, but EMDR. So one of my core beliefs is actually I'm not good enough. So, and I already know I've done a lot of my inner child work, and I continue to do it. But I think being the eldest in I'm first gen, being the oldest girl, and there's high expectations from my parents, and never feeling good enough. And so everything I did was always questioned. I went to a great college. I, had the grades. I did it all, but it was always never good enough. I could always do something more. So I think that really stood out to me. And like, there was really not a lot of room to make mistakes or take risks, because my parents, their multi-generational trauma was passed on to me. Right.
Yeah.
So I've had to do a lot of unlearning. And I think that that's the approach I've taken with social media, that I'm like, okay, this is also my opportunity to unlearn and just post it. Just post it. It's okay. Like, And getting some really good feedback from my colleagues and my followers has been really healing, because sometimes I'll just film it. I'm like, okay, because I have Kai actually runs my social media, and I'm like, just post it, Kai, like before I take it back. And just the fact that like you really are seeing like the true Liz on there,
Yeah.
and getting really really great feedback from my colleagues, like once again even family members. Like I had one of my cousins was like, Liz, what you're doing out there, it's like that's really cool. And
Mm.
I grew up very introverted, and like, wow, like you're really like out there doing this. So that's been really healing too, just getting feedback from my family as well, and seeing how I've evolved and allowing myself to play.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
think that one of the things that I've learned is, the thing about social media is we're measured by metrics, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I gave a shout out to Joy of Social Work. When she shared her story, there was like maybe a couple likes. Like it wasn't something that went viral, but it made such a direct impact in my life. And so I never forget that it's
Yeah.
not necessarily about like something going viral, although I did have a video go viral and I was like so anxious. I just wanted to hide. Like, don't look at me. Yeah. But I always remember that. Like
Yeah,
we heal through stories.
we
We heal
do.
through laughter. We heal through dance. Like all these different things.
Yeah.
And so, but the hard part of it is that it's the metrics, right? It's the all that stuff that goes into play.
You brought up something about that I think really, when you mentioned the whole why we hesitate and pushing through that perfectionist type of mindset, and it really reminded me that I think that's part of the reason what drives me now to
Mm.
sometimes push that content and
Mm-hmm.
push through that, because my whole thing is like one dude at a time.
Exactly.
One dude at a time.
Yes.
Like
That's a bar.
if I can just like if I can get one dude to understand, like, bro,
Mm-hmm.
you're not weak for like saying that you're hurting, right? The fact that you're deciding to even say it, like, brother, that takes so much guts to do. And I've when I have those moments, and I've been grateful that sometimes people share that with us, and it's like that feeling is just like, whoa, this is why we're doing it. And so when
Yeah.
I think of the perfectionist, I'm like, if I keep waiting to have that perfect reel because I want to make sure that, you know, it's not at the forefront, but I think about like, how do we get those certain number of likes? How do we get those certain number of followers? How do we put this out there, right? And I'm like, I kind of don't care about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I think like, shit, if I get one like and that dude is actually doing it because what we care about is the quality, I'm like, I did it. I can't hold back as
Right.
much. And maybe it
Yeah.
wasn't how I meant to say it, or maybe I'm learning and I could do better next time. However, if I don't practice it, I'm not going to be able. And
Yeah.
I look back, and I don't know about you guys, but I feel like my work, while it's nowhere near where I want it to be, it has evolved so much.
For sure.
Yeah.
I feel the same. I
Yeah.
I kind of cringe at a couple of.
I can't
like-
look back.
I'm like,
I
I'm
did it the other
slowly-
day.
Yo, I
was
did
like-
too. I was on my
Oh,
TikTok, and
man.
I had gotten on TikTok in 2020. I have an 18-year-old daughter, and so she put me on. I thought TikTok was a dating app. I really did. So I thought TikTok was all about, dance videos. And like I said, I got a solid 2-step, But I was looking, I was
Emphasis
like,
on the solid.
yes, solid. I
No
was like,
twerking.
no, I can't. I tried.
Come on, Brittany.
I literally can't. It doesn't
There's
happen.
tutorials on TikTok.
No, but it's like I thought that it was just all dance videos,
Mhm.
but so a lot of my earlier content is I followed the TikTok trends, because if you follow the trends on TikTok, the algorithm will
Yeah.
get you a greater audience. But I was like, nah, like I'm just gonna what I started doing is I started doing TikToks, and I started just like asking people like, hey, for those that don't have access to these services, what do you want us to speak on?
Mm.
And then I was like, it was a good tool to get the content and to just make a video on boundaries, or a video on grief, or a video on relationships, or anything like that. And so it was easier for me to not like, I gotta create this content. It's there, just speak on it. But yeah, it's really easy to get pulled away from like, the authentic content you want to create because of trends, instead of just making it your own.
Yeah, I'm a newbie in this podcast world. And so I'm going to be presenting at a Andrea conference in August. So I'm going to be using some of my season 1 Cafecito en Calidad videos just to kind of talk about EMDR and taking a holistic approach for the BIPOC community. And so we're going to be getting video clips from our different healers. So I had to go back and rewatch all of them. And let me tell you, I text Kai and I was like, cringe. Like, this was so bad. Like, I was like, she's like, no, no, no. I'm like, no. But as I've been listening to this new season of my episodes, I'm like, wow, I can see like my intros are getting better, or the way I'm asking the questions are getting better. But I had to like move past that cringe. Oh man, like it's been hard. It's been hard, but I had to do it in order to get to the place where I'm at right now. So I don't know, Juan Carlos, have you?
Well, I was gonna ask you with your podcast, like, how do you remember what it was like the first like episode that you made?
It was all bad. It was all bad.
Hot man.
I was like trying to go off of the top, memorizing something, and then I filmed 2 episodes same day. The one I tried to memorize, the second one I just freestyled it, and I just told my story, and that's when I realized like a outline's important for me, but like to memorize a whole script, it's not gonna happen. It's just not. That didn't turn out very well.
Right. And I still remember going back and being told, like, you should listen to it before you post it, and I was like, yeah, I don't know about all that. Like, it is what it is. Like,
I have somebody listen.
Yeah, exactly. I was like,
just do it.
You're doing that.
Or you're not. Or you're not gonna. I'm not gonna post that.
Voice, like, yeah. Oh. And then it was like, so like, so like, do you like, I'm like, God, Carlos.
You know what? That's how we talk, and that's okay. Like I did a TikTok.
Humanize the podcast experience.
No, some of like my TikToks that have been the most viral it's literally like a sound, right? It's like, and you know what I mean, and but like, and you know what I mean. So I create TikToks where I'm the therapist and I'm just like pretending like I'm listening, and I feel like that's like normalizing that we don't have to talk like all professional.
Yeah. It resonates.
People don't vibe with it either. Yeah, but I feel you. I say a lot of repetitive.
And as this whole thing has also been healing, and I was getting to know myself a lot more, I realized how much I couldn't handle silence. Like, to just kick back and just like, all right, cool, we're just having a moment of processing, like right now. It's cool. But when I first started, like, I was just talking and talking and talking and talking. Like, I could not just have a moment to stop, because then it was like, it's awkward. What's next? What do we say? What do we got to do? Like, man,
the transitions are hard.
Dude, I literally was like, I was mindful of when I was scheduling my therapy sessions, because I would do them right after podcast episodes.
Wow.
Because I knew, like, my mind's gonna be at 1,000.
Yeah.
I need her.
Do you guys feel like a crash after you do podcasts filming?
Always.
I feel like I tell my husband, for the rest of the day, I'm done. Like, you gotta have the kids. Like, I'm chilling. And I always have like bomb food and just
You told me that. I remember
a show.
Just to disconnect. No, on the drive, I debrief with my team, and I'm like driving home, and I'm exhausted. I call my husband too, and I'm like, can you have something ready for me to eat, or I'm just gonna go take a nap. Yeah, it's just the emotional toll, and just like being so vulnerable takes a toll.
Yeah. For sure.
Well, one of the things that actually me and my boy do, Sant, is we actually game.
Oh,
so it's like, there you go.
Once we're done, we usually like we'll cut it off. We'll debrief with our guest or just with each other, and then it's like, all right, we can play. It's like, yeah, all right, cool. And then that gives us like 30 minutes of just like, let's just have fun. Let's
nice.
What
do you play?
Down. I usually play Call of Duty.
Okay, I play Sonic All Generations.
Oh, really?
Dang.
No, I literally do have that game, but like, what's crazy is I don't think that you could call that gaming, but that's what got me through grad school. I would literally play Sonic, like the old school Sonic, All Generations. I would play that, and to just not think about anything,
to disconnect.
Yeah. That's what I mean. That's the only reason. That's how I was able to save. And to be honest, I had to stop playing video games for a long time, and then when the pandemic happened, that was my socializing. Gotcha. And like at one point, and shout out to the guys if they're listening, at one point we had like 20 guys on a Zoom call, and we're all just like talking smack to each other here while we're playing the game. And like we had nothing to do, so we were literally doing that all day, and we had to measure it eventually, and we're like, okay, cool, we got to go back to reality, but that's what got us through the pandemic. And it's also, now as a father, seeing my 8-year-old boy that likes to play the video games it's been interesting. It's been also been like,
my kids into gaming too. I'm a
dude,
little bit nervous.
you
I
know,
grew up like, I was born in 85, so like the access and like you could talk to people now. Like
yes,
my
It's like a
my
whole
son was
thing.
yeah,
It
they
is,
were
it
talking
is.
to my nephew that lives in Fullerton. I'm like,
Wow.
how what?
yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
I can play. We'll play like Fall Guys or games like that I know are more like kid friendly, but he can play while he's with his mom and I'm here. Or like sometimes
Yeah.
I'll talk to him and he's like, "Oh, I'm playing with my tío." Like he'll play with my brother, my sister, and my niece. And,
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
and I think adapting to that, because there's a lot of times
Yeah.
that I have fears that are valid, but
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't want to be the controlling parent because
Mhm.
these things exist. They
Yeah.
are out there, and so
Of course.
I think for me, it's really bringing more so awareness than
Mhm.
it is control.
Yeah, and I think even tying that back to social media, it sounds like my son's too. He's not into gaming yet, but my husband is. He games and he's able to connect to all these. I'm like, who the heck are you talking to? But it's kept him like in community.
Yeah.
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 So even coming back to social media and being seen, how do you? I don't know how you've both have seen, maybe in the BIPOC community, how we've gone even closer as a community by putting ourselves out there and connecting to, doesn't even have to be other
Mm.
therapists, but it can be other people out in social media.
I think that one of the cool things that I've seen is that we could all look different and do things in different ways. So sometimes it's just like an aesthetic video of like one of my favorite rappers watering a plant. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what does that really represent? That represents
Yeah.
many things.
Yes.
Like, being a rapper isn't necessarily thug life. Shout out to Pac. I love All Eyes on Me and all the other albums.
Yes,
But
yeah.
like, being a rapper could also mean, being with your kids and and then that leads into, because I think that being there's a very tied, what am I trying to say, there's like a close relationship to like being a rapper, to masculinity, to hyper masculinity, toxic masculinity, right? And so I think that there could be like just even just a picture that reflects something different. But also again, being people that talk about healing, right? We all look different, we all do it in different ways, we use different language, we have a different style. So I think that it's allowed for people to see like the style of each person, and to not, because in our heads I think we're also very visual people.
Yes.
So there's a level of responsibility that comes with creating content, right? But I think that's one of the cool things that I've seen is like, okay, you can be a dad, a mom, a wife, or an entrepreneur, and you could like to garden, but live here, and you know what I mean, do
Yes.
different things. And so that's one of the cool things that I love about it.
Like, so seeing people in their like true authentic self, all different facets of their lives.
Right, right.
What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I think I was very. It's funny. It took me a while to really embrace social media because I feel like I was just so cool with like not having it, And I was like, I just don't want to, and then really trying to see the beauty in it, right? And one of
Yeah.
the things that kind of piggybacking off what you're saying is like the transparency that you're able to see
Yes.
with it, right? Where again, I think there's boundaries that can be set with that, but also like
Yeah.
you mentioned with the masculinity, and I think for me it was the man boxes, right? Where it's like, okay, as a rapper, well, I have to do my life has to be a certain way,
Yeah.
and that's kind of conflicting because I'm a father, and like, do I want to be a dad or do I want to be thug life? And it's
Yeah.
like,
I mean, you could be both.
and that's what I'm saying,
Show
right?
it.
Yeah,
That's
that's what I love.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
show-
what I love.
That's
you
what I'm
can
saying, like
all different parts
because
of a
with
person. Yeah.
when you don't see that, right, and it's like, oh, it's easy to think like you have to do one or the other. If I'm
Yeah.
gonna be a construction worker, well then I have to drink all the time. Like I have to,
Yeah.
I can't embrace my feelings, right? Like,
Right.
and granted, that was my personal experience, and I know that within our community, some of us as men have felt the need to fit in those boxes.
Mhm.
And so then
Yeah.
now to see it's like, I still work construction, I can still talk shit, but like I'm gonna be responsible. I'm gonna be very
Mhm.
loving, and I'm gonna
Mhm.
plant seeds so that us as men know, like,
Right.
we got this.
Mhm.
And I think it really it creates this like what the heck moment, because we start.
Yeah.
I feel like I started running out of excuses.
Mm.
It's like, well, you get it, or to have Liz be like, yeah, Carlos, but you need to become better about embracing your feelings. I'm like, you're right, but you're a woman. You don't get it.
Mm.
Well, now it's a man. Yeah, but I work in the construction industry. Okay, there's more men in construction. Well, and same could go for a lot of things. Military. Oh, well, you weren't in the military. Now there are men in the military that are opening up vulnerability. And I think everybody in different parts of their
See what
journey.
you're saying.
But I
Yeah.
think it like that transparency really allows people to see like, whoa, we're all actually,
Connect.
yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. I love running group therapy because I feel that's the same like similar situation.
Right.
We're all so different, but we're all connected.
Mm-hmm.
We really we're more similar than we are different. And I really do. I think I've seen that on social media. Is that that we share we're because I think Brittany, you shared this
Yeah.
like how am I trying to say this? Yeah, I guess let me give my example with my my husband. My husband's Salvadorian, and I'm Mexican. And I think you shared it too, Juan Carlos. Like we can be really hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, even within our own culture. And I think that when I got married with my husband, that came up a lot. Like the beef between Salvadorian and Mexican, and then like I started connecting, and I was like, "What are you talking about? I never knew what this was." He's like, "Yeah, it's a real thing." And the more I started to even connect with even more colleagues that are Salvadorian, I'm like, "Man!" Like I told my husband, like, "We're all like so similar. Like, what's all this about? Like, what's this beef about?" And he's like, it's just something that's within our culture, Liz. Like, and it's I don't know. And I've had to kind of like even teach him some of these things. Like, we're really connected, George. I was like, we're not that different, and I think that's been one of my takeaways. And I don't know if that's something you guys have experienced, but
Yeah, I think we're all very unique and special in our
yeah,
own ways,
absolutely.
right? And like, I'm not even trying to be corny, but like, I really do believe that. And I think at the surface of it,
yeah,
what we all want at the end of the day is just to be heard and to be loved.
yes,
And then what becomes the uniqueness is like how,
yeah,
right? Like we all might want to be loved and seen in different ways, and we deserve that. We're worthy of that.
yeah,
But at the core of it, we all want the same things.
Yeah, I think that like one of my favorite videos that's kind of gone pretty viral right now. I don't know if you guys seen it, but it's this Mexican girl. She's talking about like being Latino right now is weird. And she starts breaking it down. She's like, if you're an Osabo kid, you just got to sit down and not say anything because what you say doesn't matter. And all these different, like she breaks down the division that already exists within our culture.
it's crazy, isn't
Like,
it?
what does it
Yeah.
mean to be Mexican enough? What does it mean to be this enough? And I
Wow.
think that there's a lot of that on social media. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you're not this enough, or you like, there's the whole debate of Latinx, right? And to me, like that's not new. When I was in college, you weren't allowed to say Hispanic. Professors didn't rock with Hispanic, right? So I think that one of the things that I've learned going to school in Oahu in Hawaii is that there's there's a very shared similar experience that we have with other colonized people as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
We connect through food. We
Yes.
connect through music. We connect through land. Like
Yes.
all of these different things I learned when I lived in Hawaii, and I got to meet some of my homies that were Chamorro from Guam. I got to meet so many different
Yeah.
people, and I'm like, oh, y'all do the same thing as us. It's just different,
In a different
right?
way.
Different
Exactly.
spice or
Exactly.
different-
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
But it's all, we have a lot of the shared values. I also think that there is like I said before, culturally we have to unlearn a lot, such as
Yes.
that division of you aren't this enough. I remember I was a former military spouse. We were a former military family. Remember the first base we went to was Hawaii, and there was a couple there, and I was so excited because she was Mexican, also from similar area to where I'm from, and she didn't like me because I didn't speak Spanish. I'm like, damn,
Damn.
I don't
how
fit in
interesting.
here,
Where
right?
you thought you were gonna be safe.
Right, and then I
Yes.
met,
So interesting.
but I
Yeah,
met
yeah.
another friend who's like from Commerce, and she spoke Spanish, but she like we both like became really good friends. They're like family to us now, and so but there is just kind of like this division of what
Yeah.
is enough of whatever.
Yeah, and I think it's a big part of that too. I think is it requires a lot of empathy and compassion.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I can tell you that as a man, that was very difficult for me to do. And I think it's difficult for us sometimes because I knew that I had to show up and have that for others, but I also didn't acknowledge that I never felt that. Right. And so I was very resentful. I was very bitter. And I think I was also very accepting of what I thought was that this is it, bro. Like, just be a man. Get over that part of you. And this is where I give you guys so much love too, because then going to therapy, then finding a space where I was heard, where I was guided, where I realized like I'm worthy, that I'm enough. Then I was able to show up and realize like a lot of these worlds can live simultaneously at the same time, you know. And like one that I really think about, because you just brought it up, was about like Latinx, right? And I remember seeing a TikTok where it was about pronouns.
Oh yeah.
And it was discussing pronouns, and it was talking about like, you know, we have a hard time with, you know, respecting somebody that wants to be referred to or you know, as they, them. It's like, but you so easily call them Ice Cube. And that's not the dude's name. And when I saw that though, I put myself in that position, and I was acknowledging like, why is that hard? And because I was that guy, right? And I was like, why was it so hard for me to honor somebody else's views or to respect that, right? And I was like, that's because I felt like mine weren't being honored. And I was like, I was lacking so much empathy. And I joke about this sometimes, but I'm like, we should have another pandemic, and we should just put everyone through therapy for a full week. And I know it's not going to solve our problems. It's not going to solve problems because it's like a never-ending journey. But I really feel that maybe we'll show up very differently to the conversation.
But you know, Juan Carlos, the amount of clients that started to show up in my practice, I don't know, Brittany, if you can relate to it, but the amount of clients during the pandemic that showed up in my
I believe it.
Insane.
Yeah, it was a wild time,
right? Everything coming up for
them.
Yeah,
I mean, we were, and I know that's what did it for me was then I started realizing that I really don't know how to be alone.
Oh, there you go.
Like, I've been distracted, right? And granted, like, I'm at my house and stuff like that, but it's like, no, dude, you really have just been that hustle mindset. Like, going back into entrepreneurial conversation, like, I've just been grinding.
Right.
But I'm like, I'm not embracing anything, yo. Like, I'm suppressing everything that I'm doing in my life and just.
Yeah.
And then we talked about this too. Like, I was also glorifying that. Like, in my head, I was like, yo,
hustle,
this is so attractive.
I still struggle with that. Like, there's this ongoing joke with me and my brothers and my family where, like, because we weren't allowed to sleep in. Like, you were up, ready, house clean, ready to go by 6 o'clock. Like, no questions asked. So when I became a teenager and I stood out all late, I was still waking up at 6. 3 hours of sleep was all bad. But you know, there's this ongoing joke of like who works harder, right?
Yeah.
And if one of us goes on vacation, they get roasted.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, even though I know that rest is a part of the grind. Like we talked about it before. I really had to redefine what hustle means for me. So you know, when Nipsey says last time that I checked, I'm the streets voice out west, legendary self-made progress. That means like that means so much to me, because to be self-made, for my team to be progress, it's about remembering that in order for me to get comfortable communicating in this way, in order for me to have the ideas, I need to be doing the restorative practices that are quote unquote being lazy, right?
For sure.
Yeah, like getting enough sleep, or you know, like I do free association journal entries. That's when the ideas come, and that is a part of the hustle. I read 50 Cent's book, and he talked about how Sundays he makes himself sleep in. Because he's learned that when he sleeps in, he has more, he goes into meetings, it's a reset. And you know, we obviously know why. But I'm like, oh, that's the first time I ever heard a rapper talk about like the grind in that way.
Yeah. Can I ask you something about that? Yeah. How did you feel, or did you ever hold resentment, like the thought of somebody not waking up at 6 a.m?
Is a big trigger for me.
Yeah.
Me too. My
Like
husband. No, literally,
that because like,
he's the same. I'm an early bird, and he's like, just sleep. Like, and he grew up in a similar household, but he's learned to do the opposite. But it's like, I'm like, we gotta get going, and like it is 6, 7 o'clock.
Right.
I feel so validated right now.
Well, no, I'm telling you, because I think that's where I think that's that whole conversation of like, if that works for me, that's cool. But why am I so triggered that nobody else is doing this? Where it kind of starts to
That's hard for me as a parent. Like my and my
mm,
kids, my oldest is 18, right? And it's really hard for me to not like, I don't know, to a certain degree. I'm gonna be real with you guys. To a certain degree, I value a lot of the ways that I was raised, because if I wasn't raised that way, if I wasn't raised by getting up at this time and having a routine, my grandma taught me that. My grandma, you wake up early. Yeah, I'm gonna have breakfast ready. We're gonna talk really quick, but you're gonna go get in the shower. You're gonna get ready for the day. And you're gonna go out into the world, and that's how you start your day. So I see it. There's a lot of value in that for me.
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I'm trying to figure out that balance with my own kids, where like, you know, I am not yelling at them for not being like having that routine. I guess I'm just being a little bit more lenient with the time. They can wake up they got to be ready by 9 now.
6:15.
It's funny because like I'm working on it with my relationship with my husband, but I think I've been reading a lot of research, especially for like toddlers and kids.
Yeah.
I'm like, my husband wants to wake up my toddler,
Yeah.
and I'm like, you leave him alone. Let him sleep until
Yeah.
he wakes up on his own. But when it comes to us, I'm like, we gotta get up. Like,
Mhm.
let's go. And I don't know if it's just my expectations too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very much conditioned like to wake up early, to
Oh,
be
yeah.
productive, to like, but I've had to reframe that for myself. So being productive for me is now those free association journal entries, 3 pages every day, right? And so, but I think that it's a little bit of what does that mean for us in our generation? It's
Yeah,
just
for
super
sure.
it's super hard.
For sure.
Yes.
And it's funny, like I still remember like one thing that I would never do, because I do it now, and like for example, on the way here, I had dishes that are not done. And
Uh-oh.
yeah, I know, I'm telling.
starting to
Hey,
twitch.
check it. Listen, Linda,
Breathe,
listen.
breathe.
All right, I'm out. I think I just got canceled.
Our
No,
dishes aren't done
but, like,
either.
what's crazy
Yeah.
is like, I know it was just something simple, but I thought of when I first started therapy
Mhm.
and growing up and thinking like, what are good qualities about myself? And I was like, I don't leave dishes. And I'm like, and what it was for me, was I was like, well, I was getting spanked if I wasn't doing that. And again,
Yep, yep.
the lesson of being disciplined, of taking care of yourself, of cleaning, things like that, like that's important. But I didn't make that connection. For me, it was just clean that shit up or you're gonna get in trouble. And so I think I try to keep that in mind. This isn't that I do a lot with the fathers when we do these nurturing workshops, is like trying to find a way that we can be nurturing and give power to our children, so it's not blind obedience.
Yeah.
Because I agree, like I'm 1,000% with you on that, like with my son, where I'm like, I
Yeah.
want that level of discipline with him.
Right.
But I also don't want it to come from a place of I'm telling you to wake up early. Like I in a way, it's
Yeah.
like I want him to understand, like I want to be up and be
Active and
productive.
everything.
I joked about it like with my mom, because she had made a comment. I know she didn't mean it, but she was like, once they're 18, and I was like, see, I agree to a certain extent. Like, I don't want my son to grow up thinking that once you're 18, get the fuck out. I want him to grow up and to have like so much confidence within himself,
Yes.
and knowing that I have the privilege that I can provide for him between, the funding for college and just what I have and I can capable of giving him,
Right.
that when my son is at that age that he goes, Dad, I want to dip. Like, I want to go.
You've
And I'm
given
like,
me all
cool.
the
You know what?
tools.
Yes.
You've
Like, you
given
know
me all
what?
the
Like,
tools.
that's,
You've prepared him.
and
Yes.
trust me, I'm making so many mistakes along the way, but that's the kind of dad that I want to be, where I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't want you to leave at 18 because I told you to,
You
right?
want
Or to be
Yeah.
like, I want to go to Florida because I don't want to be near my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not trying to traumatize you away from me. I want you to genuinely just be like,
Yeah.
go and make those decisions yourself,
Right. Yeah. My kid's 18.
That's right. That's right.
So I really wish that I got to this work sooner, because I've made a lot of mistakes. But we're in this season. I've just really encouraged her to like, look, when school starts, she works with me too. She runs my books and she trains with my business mentors in just learning the business part of it. I told her, like, you need to create a routine for yourself, whatever works for you. You got to create time where you go to the gym and you do yoga or whatever you want to do. You want to make time for your friends. You want to come up with a self-care routine. You know, but you also, you know, your responsibility is the kitchen. Like sometimes I'm going to need you to babysit so that we could all, I tell my kids this all the time, and we work as a team. Everybody has a job, and in order for you to do the job, it makes the day functional. And it's not one person doing everything. We all carry a role to move together, to grow together, to be better. But it's definitely, you know, I feel like at 18 it's like, you know, it's weird because it's all you could really do is like, hey, this is my wisdom, you know.
It's my offering. Here you go.
And it's interesting because I think that a lot of times that's what, you know, the older we start getting, the more control we start losing, and the more influence we start having, right? And so with that, I hope you give yourself flowers too, of like you've been doing your best, and I think you need to forgive yourself for however it is that you've raised them, because I think right now you're still modeling, just like with your work, you're modeling what it's like to be human and to be an adult, and to be like, you know what, like to me, that's dope to have a parent that says, I've made mistakes. Yeah. And I'm learning. Like,
no, that's super. Like, I definitely needed to hear that. Cause I also, a lot of people don't know this about me, but I had my oldest at 19. I was a single mom for most of my college life until I went into grad school. So I've had, you know, seeing her graduate was like super emotional. Like, you see me on social media, but like I'm a G, you know what I mean?
100%.
But
when she says, look, I'm like, it's coming. It's coming.
No, but you know, going to the graduation, I was like I was all crying, and because her graduation had me reflect on like the journey. Like I was in such survival, and she used to go to school with me, right? She used to go to class with me. We kind of, you know, she grew with me. She grew up with me. And so I've really been working on that, giving myself grace and forgiving myself for like continuing on the things that like I'm aware of now. I'm like, damn, that's not cool, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But I think that's one of the biggest pieces. That, you know, it's one of the things that really bugs me on social media is like parents that like romanticize and give this false aesthetic of what it looks like.
Parenting looks like.
That literally makes me so mad, because what happens is people that aren't necessarily aware or just trying to make it, they compare themselves to that.
And that's reality.
Yeah, that's not what it is. That's not what it is at all.
That's why I actually connect to those videos where it's like the mom, like, I don't know if you've probably seen them, but like the mom with the messy bun, everything is like, I'm laughing because it's like, that's me. Yeah. And I relate more to those videos than the mom that has it all together. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I need to see, that's so healing for me.
It's so validating too,
so
right? Like
validating to have that.
I mean, because I acknowledge that too, that I'm like, you know, finding myself when I would have these moments of like not allowing my kid to have a tantrum. Where I'm like, what I needed from him was to get in the shower, and then he's throwing the tantrum, and I'm like, fuck. And then, you know, kind of telling myself like, what do you need from him, right? For him to shower. He's doing it.
Yeah.
Let him feel what he needs to feel. And then like even acknowledging that I'm like, in a way, what I'm trying to say is I want my son to be emotionally intelligent. But then I go turn around and I'm sitting there watching the Raider game, fucking pissed off
You're a
that
Raider
we just
fan?
got picked. That we just got
it's
picked.
hard
Like,
to be a Raider
it is.
fan.
And that's what I'm saying. Like the emotional intelligence that's required to be a Raider fan. And at the same time, so I'm like not allowing my kid to feel. I'm like, dude, it's like I want him to practice something that I still don't even know how to do.
You know what I think it is, though, especially like Mexican culture, is it's hard when you feel disrespected.
For sure.
Because we're so big on respect.
That's
so
huge.
My middle one, listen, she has comebacks for days. Like, we'll put you on blast.
Wow.
And she challenges me and my husband. Like, we literally are just struggling. But it's like, we've had to really, like, you know, I've had to sit her down. Like, look, I know you're talking to me this way, and I know that you're not being disrespectful, but when you go to school, this is how people are going to view that.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to, like, first of all, unlearn that, like, to not take that disrespect personally, because they're really just, you know, they don't have that level of self-control yet and whatnot, and they're also testing your boundaries.
Yeah.
Right.
And I also think it's something that, as parents, even recognizing like, damn, you guys are doing something right, because your child maybe not in the best way, but they feel safe enough to express themselves.
You know,
And maybe it has gone
Mm.
to a point where they're frustrated too, and like you're saying, it's like, working on how we can communicate better. However, the fact that our children feel safe enough to even say that, because I didn't. Like
nope.
I was getting smacked across the face, and Liz mentioned this
Right,
to me
right,
one
right.
time that I think really stood out to me, which was, and I really do practice this with Julian now, is like, what do you need from me? Because I'm like, I know
I didn't
underneath
hear
whatever
that.
I didn't mean
I
neither.
did no,
Me
no,
neither.
no, and no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I was acting out in other ways instead of being able to have that safe space at home to be able to say, "I'm really upset with you." I had the same experience.
Which
Yes.
is, if you think about it, tying this back to social media, is it's the same level of transparency that we see in social media
Yeah.
that we didn't see in our parents.
And that's why it's so healing.
Yeah, like it's like, oh, we
Exactly.
can be real. Like I can still have a moment with like my dad friends and be like, dude, I still have a thought of wanting to punch him in the face sometimes because I get so
Yeah.
frustrated. And acknowledging that, like, I think tying it to cancel culture, there's a lot of shame that gets tied to that.
Mm.
That was holding me back
Yeah.
from stepping up.
Yeah.
Because I was like, dude, I still think about like getting mad and like Julian just frustrating me, or like I just want to cuss him out,
Yeah.
or like the thought of cheating was still present. Like all these things that, like I said, it's like I need to figure this out first in my own little cave before anybody's ever gonna accept me.
And then a reel comes up.
Dude, and the reel comes up, and then it's like you said, like it shows like a
Yes.
kid, like, it's like, oh, trying to teach my son to be emotionally intelligent, and then it shows the parent like stubbing their toe, and they're like, God, and it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
we're trying
Yeah.
to, we're trying to do both of these things, and
Yeah.
it was just
Yeah.
very validating.
Yeah, I met up with one of my good colleagues and friends the other day, and we were supposed to talk business, but we ended up talking about our own life experiences. And she's like, "Liz, let me send you something I saw on Threads." And I'm like, "All right, send it to me. Send me the quote." And she's like, "Motherhood is one of the most beautiful things, but it can be one of the hardest and most challenging jobs you'll ever have." And she's like, "I felt so." She's like, "Don't judge me though." And I'm like, "I feel the same way." 100% of the time. I love my son, but man, do I miss sometimes, like being able to just sit down and just watch TV without having to be on and be playing. And yeah, and I was like, I'm not judging you. Like, I totally get it. She's like, thank you. Cause I feel like other moms might.
And the guilt's so valid, and we talked about this earlier,
Yeah.
because I've also acknowledged that when I taken a second to reflect, I realize that I actually show up better
Yeah.
taking that
Mhm.
moment,
Mhm.
like you were saying,
Yeah.
having it where it's like, oh, I feel guilty because I need a second to breathe, or even just interesting, like telling my son, like, hey, time out, or like, you need a minute.
Yeah.
And then realizing that it's like, why don't I ever have a timeout?
Yeah, I think for me, like I struggle to talk about this, but like for me, I grew up the only girl, and so physical affection wasn't something that I was ever comfortable with. And so a big part of my work right now is recognizing how that shows up as a parent. Like I'm really I'm physically affectionate, very loving in the early stages, but when they get like to the middle school age, it's very uncomfortable for me. And it's like the frustrating thing is logically I know how important physical touch is. I know how important that is for to develop secure attachment with your kids, but it's something that was not, my parent, like my mom cooked for me and they worked, right? So there wasn't really like that part of my life where I was nurtured in that way.
Yeah.
And so to say that, right, it's like, it's easy. And it is easy, but it's also not easy if you didn't grow up with that being a normal thing that happened in your home. So I feel like vulnerability on so many different levels
Yeah.
have been challenging for many people,
Yeah.
in different ways. So for me,
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest challenges is like uh remembering, like, especially with my girls as they get older, like, to hug them and to like give them that affirmation and whatnot. But that's been something that's I didn't grow up with girls.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of conditioning that's happened for us,
Right.
which you say like it is easy, but it's not. It's like you're right. And I've thought about even like the homophobia that I was brought up with, especially
Yeah,
amongst
yeah,
men,
yeah.
right? That
yeah.
getting to a point of understanding that like if I decide that I want to wear like a satchel, and I'm comfortable with my sexuality and I know what I like, why
Right.
should that shift it, right?
Right.
And like you said, logically I get that,
Mhm.
but it took me a long time to embrace that.
Mm.
because at some point, I'm like, it is such a simple shift in mindset. And it's like, it is. But at the same time, as men, we will literally kill each other over that type of mindset. Like, that's where it's
Right.
like, it is easy, but like, this shit's really real at the same time.
Have you read Bell Hooks?
All About Love?
Yeah.
I have not.
Okay. Well, I
It's
mean,
on the list. It's
any
on the
Bell
list.
Hooks book,
It's on
but
the
Bell
list.
Hooks really showed me like how patriarchal
Mhm.
of a home I grew up in, and like how that's
Oh,
defined
yeah.
love. And so, like, what I battle with is like my husband cleaning the house and cooking. I'm like, I'm not a woman enough, right? Because that's how I was raised. Like, that's what women do in the
Oh,
home.
Brittany, I'm the same way. My husband does all the cooking.
I mean, my husband does it.
Oh, you don't.
It's
It's really nice, but at the same time, it's like
Yeah.
I grew up in a home that's very
Like,
traditional gender roles. Like,
oh yeah.
I was like, you do the cars, the outside, you fix up the house, like anything needs to be that's your
Yeah,
lane. This is
yeah.
my lane. But then, you have 3 kids and I'm running a business. He's working. It's like
Yeah.
you have to. There's that can't happen. It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's
It's
impossible.
unrealistic.
And seeing my mom, like my mom is an amazing woman. Like, she's the type of mom that worked a full-time job, but still woke up early, made everybody breakfast and cleaned and like. But I also realized that like as we get older, the body keeps score, and the body's gonna shut down if you don't take care of yourself. And so I think like that's one of the things that I'm learning is like again, I run my home as everyone has a role, everyone has a job, so that we can, function day to day. And everyone gets their needs met. We got soccer practice, we got dinner, all these different things.
Yeah, that's not talked about enough. Breaking those cycles is no joke. Like,
Mhm.
it's really heavy work. And I think even just acknowledging that sometimes our children, it's not like for me, it's not Julian's weight to carry.
Yes.
I live on my own, right? So it's
Mhm.
like, if I don't cook, if I don't do laundry, if I don't clean, it just doesn't get done, right? Like, that's just a basic need to survival now. It's not,
Mhm.
granted, I was brought up in a traditional home, and having a plate served for me will be appreciated, but it's not,
Right,
it's not
right.
like, I was just going as far
Yeah.
as like, she's amazing, she's ambitious, she's got a degree, she's living her dream.
Right.
She doesn't cook. Like, I can't.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I can't. Like,
You
she's
know,
disqualified. And I realize now that
right.
I'm like, damn, I was completely discrediting an amazing individual because the way that I was wired told me that literally was what a good woman
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
was.
It's on top of the list.
And
Yeah.
we don't talk about that because that's such
No.
it's unfortunate, but it's such
Right.
like I've been
Right.
wired this way for the last 30 years.
Oh God, I think I talked about it on your episode. The shit that my husband got for. So I have a master.
Did he serve you? Is that what?
Yes. Oh yeah, I talked about that.
Yeah,
So
my
a
boy
couple
was getting shade thrown at him, huh?
Man, he got so a couple. So I'll share both experiences. So the first one is, I have a higher degree than my husband, and a lot of his friends were like, that doesn't bother you. Like, that doesn't bother you that she, makes more money and is a business owner and has this degree. And he's like, no. He's like, no.
Mm.
And they're like, why though? Like, as a man,
Mhm.
right? Like, doesn't that make you feel less of? He's like, no, my wife is pursuing her dreams and I'm here to support her and she's supporting me along the way as I'm pursuing my own dreams. He's like, well, hey, she's doing her thing. And why wouldn't I be happy with that? And then the second experience, we went to my family's house for 4th of July and my husband served me a plate and all the men like,
That's a
"Ooh."
problem.
Yeah,
They're
for
like,
sure.
ooh, like, oh, he's gonna get you the ceviche. I'm like, yeah, I'm talking to my cousin over here. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to get up. He's already up, and they're like, wow. But like the stares he
And-
got,
And I think
I
too,
was like,
like,
I was like, man.
taking advantage now of the space. Talk about using these platforms and these spaces for social media.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
to my guys out there that are upset about those things, like, hold on to that anger. Like, that's a very valid thing to be frustrated about. I think that's what's going to drive this activism and what's going to drive the changes. Like, we are angry because we've been told that in order for us to be loved, we need to be manly men. And now that we're seeing like amazing women that they don't need us for our money, that don't need us for these things that we think we're upset. We've been
Mm.
lied to. Like you said, the patriarchy has really lied to us. And I was mad about it too, because I'm like, I'm doing what I was supposed to do, and then y'all ain't giving me no love.
Mhm.
When in reality, it's like, that was never asked of me. And so it's talking to those men that are my boys, my people, that I'm like, I hear you, dude. I hear that we're upset that she doesn't know how to cook, and that's why we're discrediting it. We're discrediting it because that's very valid. But we've been lied to, and like, talk about real freedom, like being able to break away from that box. Because I see it with my son now, like he's 8 years old. He sets up the air fryer, right? He knows how to make the rice in the rice cooker. Like these little things that I'm like, this is so normal to him. Y'all, you don't realize, bro. Like I said, and it's not. I'm not gonna resent him for that, but I'm like, you don't realize how normal this is for you. And it like
wasn't for us.
First time I moved out, I'm like, where's my grandma? Like, who's gonna do my laundry? Like,
I feel my brothers. No, but like I was laughing because I would cook for my husband, make sure he has a clean home to come home to, and he doesn't care. I want to kick it with you. And I'm like, none of this matters to you? like
you were lied to too.
Yeah, I was lied to too. Yeah, but it's like,
Man.
all he wants to do is just kick it with, like, get off your phone, let's watch a show together. Like, let's just kick it, or let's go somewhere. And I'm just like, I wasn't used to me receiving love in that way. It was always something that, you do for someone and whatnot. It's not just being present is enough. Like that's enough. And so, I think that that's something that I've had to also recognize, because we think about our love language. My love language is acts of service, but that's because that's what was modeled for me as well. That's being a good wife and a good mom. And so then when I do all these things, nobody cares.
Well, I mentioned this in one of my podcast episodes. Same. I was modeled
Right.
acts of service. And through my own healing journey, I realized I actually love quality time
Yeah.
and words of affirmation.
Yeah.
And I'm like learning now to accept that and how uncomfortable that's been. Like I communicated that to my husband. He's like, but this is what you want. I'm like, it's still like uncomfortable to accept it.
Yeah.
Because for all these years, my parents gave me and like, even gifts. And it's like, it's not really what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And learning to even do that for him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, yeah, I can definitely relate to
And
that.
I think it goes back to, like, again, there are beautiful things. Like when we
Our
go to a
culture,
family event, I tell my kids, before any of you eat, you serve your grandparents. Right? You serve your grandparents. You make sure they have something to eat first. And I think that that's something that I'll always continue to pass on to them. Right? But I also think that, like, yeah, I mean, my husband's not Mexican, but he served me. He also got roasted too.
Dang.
So I had to explain to him.
I'm definitely the mandilon in my group. Like, I'm definitely the one that's like, oh yeah, I'll take care of it.
And my husband was just like,
Yeah.
I don't really care.
Yeah.
But everybody was like, man.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. So.
And you bring up a good point, which is looking at it all subjectively, right?
Mhm.
Because it wasn't all bad, and I think that's
Yeah.
probably why for
Yeah.
us as men, I really try to do my best to leave that door open,
Right.
because the suicide rates are like higher than ever, and a
Mhm.
lot of them are men.
Mhm.
And my thing is a lot of that is because of the lack of conversation with it and acknowledging, like, yo, we're ambitious, we're grinders, we want to work, we're hustling out there. Those are parts of that are beautiful, and also we're doing way too much sometimes.
Yeah.
Like you said, like the gift giving, that was my thing. And I still struggle with this, is really understanding that I need to give my kid what he needs and not what I would have wanted.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's why I have so many monster trucks and video games in my house and dinosaurs. I'm like, my husband bought my son this huge dinosaur. It's like literally half the size of this couch. I'm like, where's this going? I donated all this stuff to this
and
school.
I'm
I
like-
love because it's the same. My house is.
Dude, I'm
So
saying I'm
bad.
guilty of it, and I'm even guilty
Yeah.
as I'm glad that I've gone through therapy, that I've like met other parents that
Yeah.
were like trauma bonding over some of this stuff, But I'm like, there's been times where I've been like
Yeah.
upset at my son because he's
Right.
like, just play with me, and I'm like, bruh, I just bought you a Nintendo Switch.
Mhm.
Like, what do you mean? And having to catch myself, like, he don't care about that.
Yeah,
He
'cause the
wants
reality-
quality time
yeah.
with you.
Kids are going to remember like the consistent connections. They're not going to necessarily remember
Quality.
Disneyland, but like for me, I remember my dad would always just get us gum, the zebra gum. Do you remember the zebra
Oh, I
gum?
do,
It lost
I do.
flavor in like
Yeah.
5 seconds.
I had
But,
the
like,
tattoo
yeah,
wrapper.
Super stale too.
Yeah, like that was just a consistent thing
Yeah.
that like, so I think that that's important to remember, is it's not like what we buy our kids. It's like the check-ins, or like the times that we just, cook together. Or I think about my relationship with my grandma. A lot of it was, eating pan dulce with her and just like what are we gonna do today, right? Like
Yeah.
those are the moments that they feel connected.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
and maybe this is also why connecting even on right now, right? Like, oh, we have coffee and we're having just really raw conversations right
Yeah.
now. These are things that we're gonna remember.
I have to say this, guys. Like, I'm gonna keep it real with you.
Keep it a stack.
I feel like, especially with like parenting, I hold so much guilt because I was a young mom. So, like, hearing your guys' conversations makes me low key emotional because it's like the first time that I'm like, dang, like, I do need to give myself grace, but also it's important to be accountable and it's important to like find that balance culturally because there's a certain part of my husband that feels like he's protective over me, and I love that, right? I think that that's a
Mhm.
part of how I was raised, and the men in our family, they were the protectors. I don't want to lose that, right? But I also wish that there was more conversations with me as a little girl around being good enough and being validated. And we talked about this, but the way me and my brothers do that, we roast each other.
Yeah.
And it's all love. Like I
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
want to change it now, right? But like I wonder how I see my husband's relationship with my girls, and my oldest daughter is from a different relationship, but my husband and him get along really great and have co-parented. We get along
Love
like
that.
with that whole side of the
Good.
family. They're like family. My two younger ones, like they call her aunts and uncles like Theos and Tias and
That's
whatnot.
dope.
So it's been beautiful. But to see my husband's relationship with my kids, especially my daughter when she was born, I was like, wow, like it's a very healing thing to see
Totally.
that like that's
No,
they're so
totally.
close.
No, same with me. I don't have a close relationship with my dad at all.
Yeah.
And the way that my husband has parented our son has been so healing for
Mm,
the way how gentle he is with him, how he
mhm.
talks so patient. I never saw that.
Right.
My dad was traveling on business,
Yeah.
absent.
And
Yeah.
that's the thing. I have a
Yeah.
lot of compassion for my
Yeah.
parents, for the men in my
Oh, yeah.
family. Like, I think that um they were just like really, they were in survival.
Totally.
Like they were
Absolutely.
really trying to
Totally.
make it. And so I don't have any hard feelings, but I also like I see the relationship and the fact that my husband could just like have a conversation
Yeah.
and not shut
Yeah.
down, or you know what I mean? Like
Totally.
that's incredible to me.
Yeah, well, it's like holding opposites, right? Like being able to see the wonderful things that our parents gave us, but also having to reflect on those parts of us,
Yeah.
right? That, the deficit sometimes. And that's
Yeah.
how we heal.
And I think like really asking myself, like, what matters more for me now? Like being right or building connection?
Mm,
Totally.
Because I've walked
Yeah.
away from situations where I'm like, yeah, I was right. He did fall. I told you. But then I'm like, but I didn't, like, I'm not really bonding with my kid right now, though.
yeah.
Right. And to your point, it was like, well, how was I brought up? And what was I being given? And those parts of me deserve love too.
Yeah.
Because I really feel, we've talked about this before, Liz, and it's like, it's really just being able to disconnect the two so that they don't intermingle sometimes. Right. Like,
Yeah.
I made this reference before, but when we learn how to drive, you learn about a red light and a green light. You know that the green light means go and the red light
Yeah.
means stop. We know that, we honor it, we respect it, and we move forward with it. And one of the beauties and challenges with fatherhood and parenting really is that even with the tools in front of us, it's hard to, like I said, right? We don't need to give our children what we didn't have. We need to give them what they need.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
We
Yeah.
get that logically, but
Yeah.
with the amount of things that we've gone through, it's hard, even to
Yeah.
this day, to
Yeah.
really like.
Yeah, I saw this one. I think it was Boosie that said, "Oh, it was a funny like something on social media. Where he's like, why are you mad at your kid? That's you. Like that's you.
He's mirroring
Exactly.
to you.
And you want to know
Yes.
like this is the other sad part too, which is again is very valid, and why I think this work is so important, is that then we also become resentful towards the children for being ungrateful.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know,
It's our own stuff.
or like
though,
I've
right?
heard my
Yeah.
dad say like, I can't remember who was the celebrity that just passed away, who the son was actually a drug addict, and my dad was like, "Oh, that ungrateful kid," like da 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 da.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
and again, I understand what he really meant, and it's a very valid thought, but that just goes to show because of the tools we had before, in his eyes, it's like we gave him everything he needed, and it didn't work. And now it's like, how cool that now we have the privilege from their efforts that we can go, hey, I know you did your best. Now I'm going to do my best, knowing that I'm failing my son if I'm worried about giving him $1 million home. And granted, I still want it. Like
you can still
we're
want
entrepreneurs here.
Hey,
Like
we're gonna
we still
heal and
grind
get
it.
money.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Like
Yeah,
we're
no, I
still
feel you on
grinding.
that.
I'm not
Social
taking that
media
away,
being
right?
seen.
Yeah,
No,
no,
absolutely.
Because even you're talking about like the smack talking,
Yeah.
and I think that's a part of my identity. Like I don't want to get rid of that.
No.
But my
Yeah.
relationships are not built on that no more.
yes,
And that's
Yeah.
what they
that's
were
not the
built on.
only
Like,
way you
there's
the
connect.
only way
more.
that I
Yeah.
connect
There's
is
more.
that, like, because I have that with my son. Like I always tell my son, I'm like, out of all my sons, you're my favorite, Julian. And he always tells me, he's like, yeah, you're my favorite, Papi, too. And I'm like, how
Aw,
cool that
that's
we
so-
can have those moments.
Yeah.
But I know that like my relationship with my kid is not built on that. But that's a part of me that I do want to hold on to that.
Yeah,
You know?
for sure, for sure. One of the accounts that I love is Belief in Fatherhood. Do you follow him? Oh my God, you would love
I
Belief
don't
in
think so.
Fatherhood. It's a content all about fatherhood, but
Okay.
like similar, like really redefining what fatherhood looks like, and even marriage. Like it's just so dope to see, and I think that a lot of it comes back to like having grace for how we were
Yes.
raised, and
Yeah.
like recognizing that there was like that season of struggle and survival, but then also I think when we're upset, I know for me, one of the things I've really learned about myself is I would get triggered when my girls would get emotional and cry because I wasn't able to do that.
Wow.
I wasn't given permission to cry. I had to suck it up, and I had to, keep it pushing. And so to a certain degree, they reflect that inner child that I'm like, go away.
And then now I'm getting triggered
Yeah.
because I hear it with my
Yeah.
mom,
Mm.
with my son, and she's like, don't cry. And then I'm like, Mom, let him cry. So I
Yeah.
think a lot of my work too has been not only trying to break those cycles with my son, but I've been having to do some even like parenting for my like my mom.
Right.
Yeah. And like learn, like we're working together and creating new tools because she
Yeah.
watches him and sometimes it doesn't rub her the right way.
Dude, it's hard.
Man.
Like I have that's a hard
It's
thing
it's
because
hard.
like I'm like, yo, you can't be cooking them all these meals. Like I can't match that. Like they are eating well, and then they don't want this. They want this, right? I'm like, Mom, like it's okay to just give them some chicken nuggets. You know what I mean?
I think it's
God
Felipe
forbid.
Esparza. He has a skit on that where he talks about like stereotypes, and he's like, it really bothers me that we've created all these stereotypes about Mexicans. Like it makes me mad. He's like, not all of us are hard workers, man. Like, just not chill,
Yeah.
But it's true.
No.
Like,
Right,
even
right,
just
right.
like going the crying thing, like asking my son, like, why are you crying, right? And having to acknowledge that, like, why should there be an explanation for it, right? Like I'm already kind of setting it up as if, oh, you're crying. That's not good. You better have a good
Yeah.
reason as to why you're
Yeah.
processing that. And sometimes the body just needs to feel.
Tot-
I speak of it now like it's easy to do, but it's
you put in the work
it's
though.
tough. Like
It is.
and that's where, again, tying this all back to social media, the transparency is so important because
Right.
my biggest like pet peeve with a lot of the social media like influencers is a lot of them talk about the success story like after the fact.
They
A-
don't
a-
show.
And my thing is
yeah.
just like, I'm capable, y'all are capable, like we are all so capable that sometimes it's like all we need is to know that there's more of us that are going through it while we're actually going. Like we
Yeah,
don't need the
listen, y'all,
answers.
I'm going through it. No, I feel you on that.
Yes.
Because and that's why like for me it's very important for me to be transparent in the fact that like I am clinically trained in a lot. But with parenting, like it is very
It's
cuz
hard.
it basically pulls at your inner wounds.
Yep.
Right. And so
Yeah.
it does require you to do your own work and whatnot. But yeah, it's important for us to normalize the fact that we don't have it figured out,
No.
and that there's, I think that there's a lot of shame, especially around parenting, like
Yeah.
of, being a mother means X, Y, and Z. And so if you're not that, like I had saw some content around on TikTok that it was a mom talking about how like she really struggled to embrace motherhood and didn't necessarily like it. And so to say that though,
Yeah, for
you know what I
sure.
mean? Like
Yeah.
because we romanticize motherhood in general.
Yeah.
We romanticize birthing. We romanticize all this,
All
and
of
it's all complex.
Like, and that opens up this other conversation of you know, we're kind of expected and we're told, and we know that we had to step up as parents. And let's keep it real. How many of us were trying to be parents when we became parents?
Mm.
Right. And so a lot of times, like for me as a man, it's like because I wasn't planning on being a dad when I found out I was going to be one.
Yeah,
and so,
me neither.
And so like to really validate the fact that it's like, yo, we're basically trying to do something that we weren't necessarily prepared for or even wanting to do. And that we shouldn't be shamed for that. Like,
But
let's just acknowledge it so that
But
we can,
also, like, I think a part of that work is grieving.
for sure.
Grieving, like, the loss of independence. I even heard a mom talk about, like, sensory overload of being a mom and always wanting the kids always wanting to be on you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, but we know that attachment is important, and we know that it's good for a baby. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's okay to also recognize that feels overwhelming sometimes.
But
My
even
dad-
on the flip side, though, I actually planned my son, and
Mm.
you still don't even have.
Yeah.
There's no book.
Right.
There's no book at all, and it's still overwhelming. The fact that mom guilt, I don't know, Brittany, if you can
Oh,
just think about
yeah.
I feel it every time. I felt it coming here, leaving my son.
See, it's funny too because I feel
On a
like
Sunday, You
On
look
a
just like
Sunday, and I'm like,
I feel the same way.
I, was gonna
I-
say, I feel like being a mom is such an easy job. You know what I mean?
I don't know who you talking to, man.
It is hard. Get him out of here. Get him out of here.
Cancel twice in one episode.
Dang.
No, but you know, it's funny because I remember being able to joke about that even with my son's mom and telling
Yeah.
her like, dude, I'm just so grateful for you because we
Mhm.
co-parent as well, right?
Yeah,
And we have
yeah,
such a good relationship. I have a great relationship with her, with her husband, you
Mhm.
know. And I remember the first time my son told me I have two dads, and I was like, the fuck you
That's
do,
hard.
right?
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
had to acknowledge that it was like,
Yeah.
it's fair for me to feel that. It's fair for me to feel that anger and that pain. Why should I take that away from him though?
Mm-hmm.
That's where for me the therapy came in, where I'm like, I need to process this. I need a space to
Yeah.
be heard about this because I'm gonna shut him down from the fact that I understand that how cool that my
Right.
son gets to be overloaded with love. You
Yeah,
know, and
that's
that this guy is such a great dude that's stepping up to also be present for my child.
that's really a blessing, like when you get it right and you do it that way. Like my husband and Zoe's dad, they get along so well. And I mean, when they kick it, like they kick
That's
it, they chop it up. But it's really cool for her to see that it's not, there's no tension, like there's, we love her whole family. And so it does create more of a a bigger network village of raising her.
Yeah, for sure. And even adding more transparency to it, the challenges that come with that. Because
Right.
unfortunately, in a very traditional home, my family struggled with accepting that.
Oh yeah.
Family.
you
Yeah.
know? And I had to
yeah.
set those boundaries because my
Yes.
dad all of a sudden was like, she don't step foot here. And I'm like, you were
Yeah,
all about
yeah.
her just a couple months ago because
Yeah,
I was
absolutely.
like your grandkid. And now all of a sudden I'm
Right.
supposed to hate her. And I'm like, that don't make sense.
Yeah.
You know? And being able to
Yeah.
validate that for my dad, but also realizing like I have a son to raise. Like
Mhm.
I got to set boundaries even within my own family.
Yeah, because they didn't see that.
No, they didn't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
right,
wasn't
right.
modeled.
Yeah.
No, I think I've had to on a different level with parenting. We've had to set boundaries, my husband and I, with our own families around like they consider our parenting soft.
Yeah.
Soft, like, oh, like you're gonna let him cry, like, or you're not gonna have him do this or that. So we've had to learn to set boundaries with our family and being able to like not let some of their negative
negative energy,
in. Because we've also, right, we have our own parenting style. And I know it's not traditional.
Yeah.
It's not traditional, but it works
Yeah.
for us.
We're challenging a lot of norms.
I think
We
that's
really
what
are.
it is.
Yeah, I think we're challenging norms and we're
lot of
finding the
norms.
balance. My husband's also former military, right? So it's like a
Mm.
balance of
Yeah.
like what do they mean by soft? First of all,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like
Yes.
that's one piece, but like
Yeah.
also taking a look at like what is the balance? Because we
Exactly.
want to teach our kids discipline. We want to teach them work
Absolutely.
Well,
ethic. We
yes.
want to
Absolutely.
teach them resilience and pushing through challenges, but we also want them to understand that yeah, feeling your feelings is not soft. That's actually human. Like your
Hard.
brain is designed
Yes.
to feel
Actually, yeah,
first
it takes
before
a-
we think.
Yes.
And
yes.
so for men that must be a task,
Oh,
right?
it's a task.
Because
Yes.
It's something that we talk about often
Yeah.
because that's usually like the first thing we discuss, right? Which is like, well, that's the problem nowadays is like we're not tough. Valid. What does tough mean?
Really defining,
Because to me,
right?
tough is like being able to sit down and be like, you know what, I've had a hard day, and if I need to cry, I'm gonna cry. I'm still gonna get shit done because that's the kind of dude that I am. but I embrace it, right?
Right.
And to me, it's like, what does the tough look like for us? And I always like to use like with sports,
Right.
where I was taught to, if it's the penalty, it's the World Cup. This is the shot. I was brought up as in like, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Just take it. It's not a big deal, right? That type of mindset, which is suppressing. It's trying to numb myself, right? And I feel that it's taken a lot of practice, and I still struggle with it now. But I was struggling anyway.
Right.
That now the mindset is like, this is a difficult shot.
Yeah.
This is a World Cup. There are, 300,000 people in this stadium, and I could potentially lose this.
You know who I think showed us that? Kobe. I think losing Kobe in LA specifically taught men like to. I remember it was Allen Iverson, and he ran into, who was the other? I think it was Dwayne Wade. They were at a basketball game. They just got the news. They ran into each other and they just hugged and cried. And I think men really needed to see that, because for me, even before Kobe passed, Kobe was that representation of the balance for me, right? He talked about meditation,
He did.
but he also was like a beast, and he was relentless on the court, right? So I love that Kobe can represent, even Nipsey Hussle represents that, right? Like that you can be different things, and you could get down if you need to get down, but you could also be there and be empathetic. That's what I love about my husband. Like my husband, my husband's from Watts, but he's opposite. So he grew up with all girls. I grew up with all boys.
Interesting.
He is so empathetic. And I remember I was sitting for my clinical exam for my licensure, and he was like getting all the questions right. I'm like, damn fool, like how? Right? But he has that emotional intelligence. Yeah. And he's like super empathetic, and he's the type of guy, like, he's friendly. He's good with everybody. He has that about him. But if somebody cross their boundaries, it's time to get to work. And I love that. I love that. Like there are cultural figures that represent that. That there's parts of us that are soft. There's parts of us that are hella gangster with it. You know what I mean? Like we could be both. Sure.
Yeah, I think that was a big driving force to really creating the platform for me. Was that it was like these worlds can live together, and it doesn't have to be so binary, right? And it does, like, it creates this shift, as I mentioned earlier, where seeing that level, like I still remember watching like boxing matches and just being like, like fuck them up, like just being so angry, right? And then to see them at the end hug, and I was like, nah.
What's funny? My daughter does jujitsu, and she's, when she first started, so my daughter and my husband, they have my middle one, they're the same.
Okay.
Very, like, she'll probably join the military. Like, she's about that life. Fearless. When she first did jiu-jitsu the first 2 weeks, I was sitting on the side, like, all tense. Like, oh my God.
What's going to happen?
Yeah, my husband's like, chill out. I'm like, but they're really fighting. They're really fighting. He's like, babe, they're sparring. And I'm like, but I'm scared. Like, this makes me feel like someone's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And after they shake hands, they bow, and they train again.
Yeah.
And to me, like, that's so dope. Yes. And they have like this creed where they talk about like only practicing jujitsu, right, if they need to. Like, it's really, it's so dope to see that.
It's such a perfect example of the discipline, right? Because for me, like, I hated that. Like, that would bother me. I'm like, no. Like, and then I had to realize, like, well, where does that pettiness really come from?
Yeah.
Where's that resentment that you're holding,
Yeah, I think you had listened to Daniel's episode on one of our podcasts. He was talking about, he's a boxer.
Oh, yeah,
and he said that. He talked all about that. Like, he would get in the ring, and they would, they would hurt each other, and they would let it all out, and then they would, like, hug it out.
Yeah.
He's like, we hugged it out, and we went on our way. He's like, there was something about doing that. It brought us together.
Yeah.
But we're cool now, and I was like, that's so neat.
Not me. Yeah. I'm holding out. I'm holding out to my life. Like, you are my enemy if we fight.
One of my favorite podcasts is actually The Pivot.
Okay.
And one of the biggest reasons is also because these guys they're ex-football players. So again, like you're saying, right, challenging those norms and really creating transparency. You look at these guys, and it's like they're men, like buff, manly. We go in there and beat each other up, but they're talking about feelings.
Right.
And for me, that's like, I love that because it's giving us more of an opportunity. I actually got to meet Fred Taylor, and that was one of the things that I got to discuss with him. I was like, dude, like, I just appreciate you being so vulnerable, because I know that it's probably healing for you, what you're doing, but you don't realize that underneath all that, you are helping so many of us feel comfortable and safe enough to speak up and at least have the conversations. Because then when I have those moments of wanting the perfect reel, I think about men like that.
Right.
And I'm like, nah, it's
And so,
okay.
yeah, and those are the most relatable ones, being able to just be the most real and transparent. And um, but as we are wrapping up our podcast
I know. I feel like we could go on
we
for
can go on and
days.
on. Um, I want you guys to share, how can we continue to support the beautiful work that you're doing so that our beautiful guests can follow you guys?
Yeah, we're on Instagram at The Modern Macho. You can find all of our information, all of our content, everything that we're doing there. And the website, www.themodernmacho.com. And you can find us on any streaming platform as well. Me and my best friend have a podcast, just having the conversations.
Yeah, same. You can find me on Instagram, B Williams LCSW. We also have the podcast, the Wholehearted West Coast Living Podcast. And yeah, if you're interested in working with us too, you could find the links to our bios all within IG.
All right. So thank you, both of you, for sharing your knowledge and sharing this space with me today.
Thank you for having us.
And that's a wrap. We're done.
That was fun.
Oh.